Continuing in the Maimonides daily study with the Chabad program of daily Rambam study, Maimonides. This is part 3 of the negative commandments, and this will conclude the portion of the commandments and the negative commandments, starting with negative commandment 245. Not to rob, as Leviticus 19:13 states, do not rob. 246, not to alter land boundaries, as Deuteronomy 19:14 states, do not remove your neighbor's landmark. 247, not to wrong a colleague by withholding his due, as Leviticus 19:13 states, do not wrong your neighbor. 248, do not deny a just claim, as Leviticus 19:11 states, do not deny your neighbor's claim. 249, not to swear falsely in denying a monetary obligation to a colleague, as Leviticus over there states, do not swear falsely, meaning do not swear falsely about money owed to a colleague. 250, not to cheat in business, as Leviticus 25:14 states, one man should not cheat his brother. 251, not to hurt someone with words, as Leviticus 25:17 states, and one man shall not wrong another. This prohibition refers to hurting someone with words. 252, not to hurt a convert with words, as Exodus 22:20 states, do not wrong a convert. 253, not to cheat a convert in business, as Exodus in that same section continues, nor oppress him. 254, not to return a slave who fled to Eretz Israel to his master, who lives in the diaspora. Interesting. As Deuteronomy 23:16 states, do not deliver a servant to his master. Lo tasgir eved el adonav. Do not deliver a servant to his master. Wow, I never knew that one. 255, not to wrong such a servant, as Deuteronomy 23:17 states, he shall dwell in your midst in the place which he selects, as he sees fit. Do not wrong him. 256, not to oppress any widow or orphan, as Exodus 22:21 states, do not oppress any widow or orphan. 257, not to have a Hebrew servant perform servile tasks, as Leviticus 25:39 states, do not work him as a slave. Okay. 258, is not to sell a Hebrew servant as slaves are sold, as Leviticus 25:42 states, do not sell them as slaves are sold. How come I never remembered any of these things? Lo yimkru b'mecheret aved. Wow. 259, not to make a Hebrew servant perform rigorous work, as Leviticus 25:43 states, do not rule over him with rigor. 260, not to allow a Gentile who purchased a Hebrew servant to make him work rigorously, as Leviticus 25:53 states, he shall not rule over him with rigor. 261, not to sell a Hebrew maidservant to another person, as Exodus 21:8 states, he shall have no power to sell her. 262, not to withhold from a Hebrew maidservant who has been designated as a bride, as bride living expenses, clothing, or conjugal rights. As Exodus 21:10 states, he may not diminish her living expenses, clothing, or conjugal rights. The above applies also to other wives. 263, not to sell a Yefator as a maidservant, as Deuteronomy 21:14 states, do not sell her. You cannot sell Yefator. 264, talk about irrelevant. These are majorly irrelevant. You can't even perform these if you wanted to. The whole idea of Yefator is not even relevant. Unless it's conceptual. It's the only way. 264, not to force the Yefator to serve as a maidservant, as Deuteronomy continues, do not rule over her. 265, not to covet, as Exodus 20:14 states, do not be envious of your neighbor's wife. 266, not to desire As Deuteronomy 5:18 states, do not desire your neighbor's house. 267. For a worker who is harvesting crops, not to eat from the unpicked produce before he has finished work. As Deuteronomy 23:26 states, do not live testicle. 268. For a worker not to take more than what he eats from the produce he harvests, as Deuteronomy 23:25 states, do not put any into your receptacles. 269. Not to ignore a lost object, as Deuteronomy 22:3 states, you may not ignore it. Not to leave an animal fallen under its load on the road, as Deuteronomy 22:4 states, you may not watch your neighbor's donkey. 271. Not to falsify measurements, as Leviticus 19:35 states, do not act deceitfully in judgment. According to the oral tradition, we have learned that this verse prohibits acting deceitfully regarding measurements. 272. Not to possess two sets of weights and measures, as Deuteronomy 25:13 states, you may not have in your home. Not to act deceitfully in judgment, as Leviticus 19:15 states, do not pervert justice. Reish Ayin Gimel, Reish Ayin Daled, Ra'ad. So it turns to Ader because you don't want to misspell it, a bad thing, I guess. Not to accept bribes, as Exodus 23:8 states, do not take a bribe. Okay, and this is, okay, for 275, they write it in a different order. It would be ra'ah, it means bad. So they want to do ara, so it won't be bad. So 275 is not to honor a man of stature and judgment, don't give him special respect and judgment. Do not show respect to a great man. Okay, 276. For a judge not to fear, rendering a just judgment because of a wicked man, as Deuteronomy 1:17 states, do not fear anyone. 277. Not to have mercy on a poor person in judgment, as Exodus 23 states, 23:3 states, and do not favor a poor man in his cause. 278. Not to pervert judgment against a sinner, as implied by Exodus 23:6, which states, do not pervert the judgment to a poor person. This refers to someone who is poor with regard to the observance of the mitzvot. 279. Not to have pity on a person who has caused damages and judgments concerning fines, as Deuteronomy 25:12 states, let your eye not pity. 280. Not to pervert the justice due converts or orphans, as Deuteronomy 24:17 states, do not pervert the judgment of a convert or an orphan. 281. Not to listen to one litigant in the absence of the other. Exodus 23:1 states, do not hear a false report. 282. Not to render a conviction in a capital case when there is only a majority of one. As Exodus 23:2 states, do not follow the majority to do evil. 283. For a person who argued in favor of acquittal in a capital case, not to argue for a conviction, as Exodus states, do not speak up in a trial to influence. Lo ta'aneh al riv nintot. 284. Not to appoint a judge. Not to appoint as a judge a man who is unlearned in the Torah, even if he is learned in other disciplines, as Deuteronomy 1:17 states, do not show favoritism regarding judgment. 285. Not to give false testimonies, Exodus 23:13 states, do not give false testimony against your brother. 286, for a sinner not to act as a witness, as Exodus 23:1 states, do not conspire with a wicked person to be a corrupt witness. 287, for a relative not to work as a witness, as Deuteronomy 24:16 states, fathers shall not die because of children. For a relative not to act as a witness. For a relative not to act as a witness. Father shall not die because of his children. According to our tradition, we have learned that the verse teaches that fathers should not die through the testimony of their sons. The same law applies regarding to other relatives. 288. 288. Not to render a decision based on the testimony of a single witness, as Deuteronomy 19:15 states, a single witness shall not rise up against a person. 289. Not to kill an innocent person, as Exodus 20:13 states, do not murder. 290. Do not to render a decision on the basis of presumption unless two witnesses observe the actual matter, as Exodus 23:7 states, do not slay the innocent and the righteous. 291. For a witness not to render a decision in a capital case in which he testified, as Numbers 35:30 states, one witness shall not testify in a capital case. 292. Not to execute a person liable for execution before he stands trial, as Numbers 35:12 states, the murderer shall not die until he stands before the congregation. 293. Not to have pity on a pursuer, rather he should be killed before he kills or rapes the person he is pursuing, as Deuteronomy 25:12 states, and you shall cut off her hand, show no pity. I don't see how it's derived from there. 294. Not to punish a person forced to commit a sin, as Deuteronomy 22:26 states, do not do anything to the maiden. 2, because she was raped and she was beeped and she couldn't do anything about it. So that's why you shouldn't punish someone who was forced to commit a sin. 295. Not to take a ransom from a murderer, as Numbers 35:32 states, do not take a ransom for the life of a murderer. 296. Not to take ransom in return for exile for a person who kills accidentally, as Numbers 35:32 states, and do not take a ransom for having to flee to his refuge city. 297. Not to neglect a person in mortal danger, as Leviticus 19:16 states, do not stand in the face of mortal danger. Lo tamod al dam re'echa. 298. Not to leave obstacles, as Deuteronomy 22:8 states, lest you bring blood upon your house. Lo tasim damim beveitecha. 299 is not to mislead an unsuspecting person, as Leviticus 19:14 states, do not place a stumbling block before the blind. And 300. Not to add lashes when whipping a person liable for such punishment, as Deuteronomy 25:3 states, do not add lashes, lest by giving him this is punishment and he'll become degraded in your eyes. Okay, so we went to 300 and we'll stop here, take a little break after about how long? 13 minutes. Okay, we'll continue the rest. 65, and that's it. That'll be it. And we're back at number 301 until 365 and completing this section, God willing. Number 301 is not to gossip, as Leviticus 19:16 says, do not go around as a gossiper among your people. 302, not to bear hatred in one's heart, as Leviticus 19:17 states, do not hate your brother in your heart. 303, not to embarrass any Jewish person, as Leviticus states, you shall surely rebuke your neighbor and not bear a sin because of him. 304, not to take revenge, as Leviticus 19:18 states, do not take revenge. Okay. 305, not to bear a grudge, as Leviticus states, do not bear a grudge. 306, Not to take a mother bird together with the young, as Deuteronomy 22:6 states. Do not take the mother bird together with the young. 307. Not to shave the hair around the bald spot brought about by Sarah, as Leviticus 13:33 states, and he shall not shave the bald spot. 308. Not to remove the signs of Tzara'at, as Deuteronomy 24:8 states. Be very careful concerning signs of Tzara'at. Okay. 309. Not to till or sow the land around a powerful river. At which atonement was made for an unsolved murder, as Deuteronomy 21:4 states, which must never be tilled and never be sown. 310. For a groom not to be held liable for any type of public service, for example, army or guarding the walls of a city and the like, as Deuteronomy 24:5 states, he shall not go out to the army nor be charged with any duties. 311 is not to allow a sorcerer to live, as Exodus 22:17 states. Do not allow a witch to live. 312, not to reject the authority of the court, as Deuteronomy 17:11 states. Do not swerve from the word which they tell you, right or left. 313, not to add to the mitzvot of the Torah. This applies both to the written law and to its explanation conveyed by the oral tradition. As Deuteronomy 13:1 states, carefully observe everything which I command you to do. Do not add to it. 314 is not to diminish from any of the mitzvot of the Torah. As Deuteronomy continues, do not diminish from it. 315, not to curse a judge, as Exodus 22:27 state, do not curse judges. 316, not to curse a Nasi. Interesting. Not to curse a Nasi, the king or the head of an academy in Israel. It says, do not curse the Nasi of your people. $317, not to curse any other Jew, as Leviticus 19:14 states. $317, not to curse any other Jew, as Leviticus 19:14 states. Do not curse even a deaf mute. 318, not to curse one's father or mother, as Exodus 21:17 states. One who curses his father or mother shall surely die. 319, not to strike one's father or mother, as Exodus 21:15 states. One who strikes his father or mother shall surely die. 320, not to work on the Sabbath, as Exodus 20:10 states. Do not do any work. 321, not to travel beyond the boundaries of a city on the Sabbath, as travelers do, as Exodus 16:29 states. A person should not leave his place on the Sabbath day. 322, for a court to inflict punishment on the Sabbath, as Exodus 35:3 states. Do not kindle a fire on the Sabbath day. For a court not to punish on the Sabbath, because it says don't kindle a fire on that. How do you get that? 323, not to work on the first day of Pesach, as Leviticus 23:7 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work on these days. 324, not to work on the seventh day of Pesach, as Leviticus 23:8 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work on these days. 325, not to work on the holiday of Shavuot, as Leviticus 23:21 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 326, not to work on the first day of the seventh month. the day of Rosh Hashanah, as Leviticus 23:25 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 3:27. Not to work on Yom Kippur, as Leviticus 23:28 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 3:28. Not to work on the first day of the festival of Sukkot, as Leviticus 23:35 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 3:29. Not to work on the 8th day of the festival of Sukkot, as Leviticus 23:36 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 3:30. Not to have intimate relations with one's mother, as Leviticus 18:7 states, she is your mother. Do not commit incest with her. 3:31. Not to have intimate relations with one's sister, as Leviticus 18:19 states, do not commit incest with your sister, your father's daughter. 3:32. Not to have intimate relations with one's father's wife, as Leviticus 18:18 states, do not commit incest with your father's wife. 3:33. Do not to have intimate relations with a sister, the daughter of either your father or your mother, as Leviticus 18:11 states, she is the daughter of your father's progeny. Do not commit incest with her. Not to have intimate relations with one's son's daughter, as Leviticus 18:10 states, do not commit incest with your son's daughter. 3:35. Not to have intimate relations with one's daughter's daughter, as I'm like check. Like, not to have intimate relations with one's daughter, as Leviticus over there continues, do not commit incest with your daughter's daughter. 3:36. Not to have intimate relations with one's daughter. Why was this prohibition not explicitly stated in Torah? Since the Torah forbade intimate relations with one's daughter's daughter, it did not mention the prohibition against intimate relations with one's daughter. Nevertheless, according to the oral tradition, the prohibition against relations with one's daughter has the status of a Torah law, like the other sexual offenses, and is not considered as rabbinic in origin. 3:37. Not to have intimate relations with a woman and her daughter, as Leviticus 18:17 states, do not commit incest by marrying a woman and her daughter. 3:38. Not to have intimate relations with a woman and her son's daughter, as Leviticus over there continues, her son's daughter. 3:39. Not to have intimate relations with a woman and her daughter's daughter, as Leviticus over there continues, her daughter's daughter. I think that there's no grandmother. A person's allowed to have relations with their grandmother. There's no, like, who would want to, you know what I mean? Continues, her daughter's daughter, you shall not take. 3:40. Not to have intimate relations with one's father's sister, as Leviticus 18:12 states, do not commit incest with your father's sister. 3:41. Not to have intimate relations with one's mother's sister, as Leviticus 18:13 states, do not commit incest with your mother's sister. 3:42. Not to have intimate relations with the wife of one's father's brother, as Leviticus 18:14 states, do not commit incest with his wife, she is your aunt. 3:43. Not to have intimate relations with one's son's wife, as Leviticus 18:15 states, do not commit incest with your daughter-in-law. 3:44. Not to have intimate relations with one's brother's wife, as Leviticus 18:16 states, do not commit incest with your brother's wife. 3:45. Not to have intimate relations with one's wife's sister, as Leviticus 18:18 states, do not take a woman as a wife together with a sister. 3:46. Not to have intimate relations with a woman in the Nida state, as Leviticus 18:19 states, do not come close to a woman in the Nida state of impurity. 3:47. Not to have intimate relations with a married woman, as Leviticus 18:20 states, do not lie carnally with your neighbor's wife. 3:48. Not to perform a sexual act with an animal, as Leviticus 18:20 states, and do not lie carnally with any animal. 3:49. For a woman not to perform a sexual act with an animal, as Leviticus 18:23 states, that a woman should not present herself to an animal for sexual purposes. 3:50. Not to commit sodomy, as Leviticus 18:22 states, and do not lie with a male as one lies with a woman. 3:51. Not to commit sodomy with one's father. As Leviticus 18:7 states, do not commit sexual offense with your father. 3:52. Not to commit sodomy with one's father's brother, As Leviticus 18:14 says, do not commit a sexual offense with your father's brother. 353, do not be intimate with a woman with whom sexual relations are forbidden in matters that might lead to intercourse, for example, embracing, kissing, winks, or signs. As Leviticus 18:6 states, no person shall approach a close relative to commit a sexual offense, but based on their own tradition, we have learned that this prohibits intimacy that might lead to sexual relations. 354, for a mamzer not to marry a natural-born Jewess, as Deuteronomy 23:31 states, a mamzer may not enter God's congregation. 355, for there not to be a kadesha, a woman who engages in intimate relations without a marriage contract and a marriage ceremony among Jewish people. As Deuteronomy 23:18 states, there shall not be a kadesha. 356, for a man who is divorced not to remarry his divorcee after she marries anyone else. As Deuteronomy 24:4 states, her first husband who divorced her may not take her as a wife again. 357, for Yavam not to marry anyone other than her Yavam, as Deuteronomy 25:5 states, the wife of the deceased shall not. Okay. 358, for a beepist not to divorce the woman he beeped. As the Deuteronomy 22:29 states, he may not send her away for his entire life. 359, for a person who defamed his wife's character not to divorce her. As Deuteronomy 22:19 states, he may not send her away for his entire life. 360, for a man incapable of procreation not to marry a natural-born Jewess. As Deuteronomy 23:2 states, a man with crushed testes may not enter the congregation. Okay. 361, not to castrate a male from any species, neither human, a domestic animal, a wild beast, nor a bird. As Leviticus 22:24 states, you shall not do this in your land. 362, not to appoint a convert to a position of authority over the Jewish people. As Deuteronomy 17:15 states, you may not appoint a foreigner over you. 363, for a king not to accumulate many horses. As Deuteronomy 17:16 states, he may not accumulate many horses. 364, for a king not to accumulate many wives, as Deuteronomy 17:17 states, he may not accumulate many wives. And 365, the 365th negative commandment, the final one, is for a king not to accumulate much silver and gold, as Deuteronomy continues, and he may not accumulate very much silver and gold. These 613 mitzvot were given to Moses on Mount Sinai, together with their general principles, particular points, and details. These general principles, particular points, and details represent the oral law, which each court received from the previous court. There are also other commandments that were instituted after the giving of the Torah. I thought we just said don't add. There are also other commandments that were instituted after the giving of the Torah. They were established by the prophets and the sages and disseminated throughout Israel. For example, the reading of the Megillah, lighting a Hanukkah lamp, fasting on Tisha B'Av, setting up Eruvim, and washing one's hands in preparation, and prayer and eating. Each of these commandments also possesses explanatory aspects and details. All of this will be explained in this text. We are obligated to accept and observe all these commandments, which the rabbis instituted, as implied by Deuteronomy 17:11. Do not deviate from the instruction that they will give you, right or left or right. They are not considered to be additions to the commandments of the Torah. If so, what was the intention of the Torah's warning in Deuteronomy 13:11? Do not add to it and do not detract from it. That a prophet is not permitted to introduce a new measure and say that the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded this mitzvah to us, and that it should be added to the Torah's mitzvot, or to say that He commanded that we eliminate one of the 613 mitzvot mentioned above. However, if a court, together with the prophet of that age, adds a commandment as an ordinance, a lesson, or as a decree, it is not considered as an addition. He is not saying that the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded us to make an Erev or to read Megillah, although the bracha is a shirkat chana. Okay, read Megillah as appointed time. where he say so, he would be were he to say so, he would be adding to the Torah. Instead, we are saying that the prophets and the courts ordained and commanded that the Megillah be read at its appointed time in order to recall the praise of the Holy One, blessed be He, the salvation He wrought for us, and His response to our cries, so that we will bless Him, extol Him, and inform the future generations of the truth of the Torah's promise in Deuteronomy 4:7. What nation is so great that God is close to it, etc. Similar principles apply with regard to all the other rabbinic commandments, be they positive commandments or negative commandments. That will do it for the commandments.